Welcome so much to today's webinar, Leveraging Social Media for Recruiting. The reason we have this is because there is amazing technology out there to help you move your efforts forward to finding the talent that you need, but sometimes it can be daunting and you may not know where to start. So we wanted to cover that today. My name is Carolina Andes and I have Bronwen, Gregg, and Charlotte Pinckney with us today. We're going to take a moment to introduce ourselves and what we do. Charlotte, tell us a bit about yourself.
Hi, thanks so much for having me. I'm so excited to talk about this today. My name is Charlotte Pinckney, and I am Insight Global's manager of social media. I have been with the company since 2017 and have been in my role over social media for about 5 years now, starting from the branding space and moving into focusing much more so on social media.
Awesome. Bronwen?
Yes, thank you so much for having me as well. Very, very happy to be here. Very passionate about this subject. So excited for the discussion today. But yes, my name is Bronwen Gregg. I'm a senior account manager with Insight Global. So I've been with the company for 8 years, started in our Richmond, Virginia office where I was supporting mostly government services. And mid-pandemic in 2020, was asked by the company to move out to Las Vegas, where I now lead our gaming casinos portfolio. Outside of IG, I'm also president of WISE, Women in Sports and Events, the Las Vegas chapter, as well as membership co-chair of Global Gaming Women.
Awesome. That's amazing. And I'm loving the view of Vegas that we're getting behind us right now. It's incredible. So again, my name is Carolina. I'm a senior content marketing manager here at Insight Global, and I'm passionate about storytelling and creating content that connects with others. And so at the heart of everything, that's really what we're talking about here today. And that's something that each of us have great experience with in different ways. Now, social media, it's such a big topic, as I'm sure you all know, to even start talking about. Like, I first started with social media and learned coding from MySpace.
Yes.
Right? We all learned how to add songs. Oh yeah, absolutely. And I remember when I needed a college email to get a Facebook, or when Instagram was just a photo editing app. But now all of those spaces are so much more. I mean, you can't have marketing or a business really without some form of social media strategy.
Mm-hmm.
Now, leveraging it as a hiring manager to find the talent that you need is incredibly important. And as we're entering this more and more of a digital age, it's becoming even more important. And so thinking of the struggles that you might be experiencing, or even just the journey to try to hire someone, right? You're writing a job description, you're advertising it everywhere you can. Like, what are some of the struggles that we normally see with sourcing and with screening resumes just in the industry right now that you all see?
Well, I can start with this one. I think, right, I don't know if everyone's heard the term posting and praying, right? Just putting it out there with no, to your point, no strategy digitally, where, that's in a post-COVID world, that's where that first impression takes place. But also too, right, once again, if you're not actively recruiting, if you're not really putting yourself out there, putting that job out there in a very intentional way, you're missing out on so much talent.
Yeah, that's such a good point. And it's funny, I'd never heard of that, the posting and praying.
Yeah.
And that sounds about right. And social media, this is where it can really step in and be that sourcing tool as well as a brand awareness tool, which we'll talk a bit more about that in a minute. But before we dive into the how-to of how to leverage social media, we wanted to take a bit and talk about some of the different platforms that you've probably heard of. And so we want to touch on this though, because sometimes the way that we experience a platform as a consumer is different than how you want to use it in terms of recruiting. So starting with the obvious, LinkedIn. LinkedIn is where business professionals live. Charlotte, why don't you tell us a little bit about who might want to use LinkedIn for recruiting?
Yeah, absolutely. Off the bat, if you're a hiring manager, you need to be on your LinkedIn game, right? You shouldn't just be going to LinkedIn to post a job or to, check in with candidates, but you should really be on this app all year round. Not only posting about the jobs that are open that you're actively trying to fill for, but also building your own brand as a hiring professional and establishing credibility in that space so people are more receptive to even respond to you or open your message.
I think that's such a good point because it's almost like, I mean, how many cold emails and cold calls do we get a day? The reason we don't take them is because there's not a person behind them. I mean, there is, but it feels cold.
Yeah.
And so a part of why we're more receptive to content on social media is because it feels warm. It's like there's a real person behind it. So I love that point. There's always YouTube. YouTube is one, I don't know about you all, but that takes a lot of dedication and time. It's definitely valuable, but you have to be prepared to consistently make content and be a thought leader in the industry. And so that's a space where if you do want to attract job seekers and candidates, you have to create content that's relevant to them. And so, Charlotte, in your experience managing social media, do you find LinkedIn still to be kind of the bread and butter of where to go?
Absolutely. And talking about YouTube specifically, YouTube is a great place to maybe drive people from your LinkedIn if you want them to learn more about your company, more about, maybe you have a playlist about interviewing or a certain type of skill set. But I'm still seeing LinkedIn as being, like you said, the bread and butter of where hiring managers should be focusing.
Awesome. That's a good trend to know. And then, of course, there's always Facebook, which, again, depending on who you're trying to reach, if the candidate you're looking for, if you think that they're still living on Facebook, by all means, leverage that platform. And of course, there's Instagram and TikTok. What are y'all's thoughts about Instagram lately in terms of recruiting? Do you see that as a big tool?
I see it as a tool for brand awareness, right? But Instagram is definitely. I always kind of joke, right? I recently turned 30, and I'm like, now that I'm in my 30s, my LinkedIn has become my Instagram, right? That's where I'm on, most of the time. So I feel like Instagram, there's value in that from a personal standpoint, but professionally, right? LinkedIn is still really the place to be.
Awesome. Charlotte, would you say that it's the same from your perspective running the different channels?
Yes. And another thing I just wanted to hit on too is the algorithm changes on Instagram, especially if you are looking at it from a branding perspective. You just have to be super careful that you're still presenting yourself in an authentic way on a platform like Instagram, which is starting to feel a lot more, selly and advertisements everywhere. So it's just one of those places to be mindful that you're using it to the best ability that you can.
Awesome. That's definitely good to know. And so all that being said, there are so many different types of social media platforms that you can leverage. What we are going to primarily talk about today is LinkedIn because that is the hub for professional connections. And that's ultimately what we're trying to do, right? It's not just about finding that talent for that one open rec that you have. It is about building a personal brand, building connections, and building a network to make meaningful hires, to find candidates who are a culture fit and a culture add to what you're trying to do. So first, we're going to start with some of the benefits of social media recruiting because there's a lot of them, but we're going to share some of our favorites. So personally, one of my top favorites, and I believe a huge driver for why this is important, is because it comes at low to no cost at all, right? There are plenty of costs that can accrue with the beautiful art of recruiting, whether that's these platforms that come up, advertising on different websites, but social media doesn't have to add a dime. It's something that can come down to time that you put aside every day to be intentional about leveraging the platform. Another thing that's really awesome about social media recruiting is that it's organic. As we were talking about earlier, those like cold calls, they just don't hit. I mean, for you guys, like when's the last time you got a cold message or email or call or text message that you actually wanted to respond to?
It's been a second.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I have not, right. I don't think I've cold called in years. Right. All of my all of my meetings, right, customers, they come to me, or, we originally connect on LinkedIn, or, it's built out from a referral network. And there's so much power in that. So it's less transactional, and right, you're not just a voice over the phone.
Bronwen, I love that you said too that it can be less transactional because again, if you're building out your profile and you're really using it, then it's not just, oh, this random person is reaching out to me, but it's this person with a story and with passions. And wait, I think we care about the same things, and we're talking about the same industry, and that makes me excited to engage with this person. And so when you said that you haven't had to cold call and that you're mainly using LinkedIn, that's absolutely incredible to have those organic conversations. I mean, we all know that we've gotten connections if you've been a hiring manager, and when you get someone who has no idea what your company is, who you are, what you do, it's not likely to go anywhere. But imagine if you get someone further down the pipeline who's already warmed up to your organization. That's what social media can do for you. So the other benefit of it is not only are you getting organic, warm leads, you're also able to reach passive leads with less competition. The reality is that by the time someone is putting their resume out there, they're putting it out to, I mean, how many different places do you think people are applying to at one time now, Bronwen?
Oh my gosh. I mean, I've heard stories because, right, like being in the market, it's a full-time job in and of itself. I've heard stories of candidates, submitting their resume to over 100 places in a week, right? I mean, it's crazy.
That's a lot. And so if you do get a resume from a candidate that you like, they've probably sent it out to 100 other organizations. And so by the time you're getting those leads, you're competing with other offers, other companies. Whereas if you're being proactive and reaching out to people before they're in that phase, the reality is you might have significantly less competition.
Yeah. And I think a couple important things to note on that topic, right? So it helps candidates really connect the dots in their backgrounds. I always tell people, right, I'm not leaving Insight Global anytime soon. I love it here. But, if I were to enter the job market myself, I would actually have two completely separate resumes. Not because I'm lying, not because, right, I'm fluffing, but because I would have a resume that highlights my recruiting expertise, and I would have a separate resume that highlights my business development expertise. And by researching a company prior, right, I would be able to connect the dots in my background that would align to, their values, their culture, their mission, anything transferable in my background that maybe I don't have, but I'm able to, paint that picture and tell that story about how something, once again, transferable connects in my background.
I love that. And so when you think of a hiring manager being able to connect with those leads more passively and organically, it allows for those conversations and that kind of deeper dive into understanding, like, is this person going to be a fit upfront? Whereas traditionally, we're getting these resumes, we're going through them, and it takes how many interviews before you realize this isn't a fit? Or on the flip side, you screen out a candidate that actually would have been a great fit if you could have just gotten to know them. And so social media is amazing for being able to find more quality leads more effectively.
And you mentioned the passive market too. And I think that's really important to touch on as well. Right, Insight Global, the majority of our service offerings are contingent. We do offer retained, but we actively recruit. We're not paid until that person walks in the door for the majority of the time, unless we are doing retained, right? So with that being said too, building this network as a hiring manager, as a talent acquisition professional, to your point, you're able to tap into that passive candidate market. I'm really proud to say this year alone, right, over 75% of my placements have been through referral networks, and it's, engaging. Yes. And it's engaging with, it's so powerful, and it longer term play. It took a couple years to, build that network. But now that we have it, we're able to provide our customers with that, valuable insight on that passive market, even though we're still working contingent and not retained.
I love that. That's so powerful to hear and inspiring, right? And I know from your numbers internally, you are crushing it. And so when you think of leveraging social media for your business goals, whether that's trying to reach clients or it's trying to hire the right people for your company, you are a walking, living, breathing example of how much more effective and quality these warm, organic connections can be. And which also brings me to the next point, that another benefit of social media marketing is it empowers your internal employees. Having the ability to say, hey, it's not just HR's job to hire, it's our job to promote our organization and to help find the people that we want to work with. And Charlotte, I'd love to ask you a bit about that because that's something you have excelled at. For those of you who have not taken a look at Insight Global's LinkedIn, you absolutely have to. Charlotte, how many followers are we at now? Last I checked, it was like 1.3 a month ago. What are we at now?
We're just shy of 1.5 now. So my goal is we hit 1.5 by July. So stay tuned.
That's amazing. So if you're not following yet, be sure to help us
Shameless
get there.
plug, help us get there.
That's really incredible. And now I want to ask you a bit about that because as we talk about, a big benefit of LinkedIn for recruiting is empowering that internal employee. Tell us a little bit about how can a hiring manager be the best partner for hiring the right talent?
Yeah, absolutely. In my experience, the best hiring managers are active on LinkedIn specifically, and they're really taking it upon themselves to be a brand ambassador in addition to their hiring role, which is fantastic from someone working in social, seeing them use our content in this way. And I see it being really beneficial for them because not only are they sharing about our company in a way that's much more authentic and valuable to someone seeing that, but they're also establishing credibility for themselves as being a trustworthy, knowledgeable, real hiring partner.
I think that's such a good point. And, it makes me think I've been with Insight Global for a year next month, which is really exciting. But I had just moved to this city. I had actually never heard of Insight Global until a recruiter reached out to me. And so I was trying to Google it, to research it. And what made me want to take this job was going on LinkedIn and looking at the people who worked here. There were some incredible people who I found who were women of color, who were leaders in the company. And I thought, wow, if this is a company where somebody who has a background like my own can thrive and succeed and be happy, that's something I want to be a part of. And that is what made me take the jump to say, okay, I want to, and I was a passive person. I was not actively looking. And that made me take the jump to say, yeah, I'll leave it all behind to be a part of this.
Yeah. Employee engagement is one of the most valuable assets you can have when it comes to marketing your company on social media, for sure.
I think that's a huge point. So for those of you who are taking notes, I would write that down because that engagement is the game changer. It's a collective effort too. It's what makes it feel organic. I mean, if you think of putting yourself in the position of a consumer on social media, when you look at somebody who is organically posting, it's exciting to follow along with that story. If you go somewhere and it's like every single thing is just an ad, next, skip. You don't want it. It's the same for trying to recruit. You want to feel like you're following along with something that is engaging and authentic. So I love that point, Charlotte. Now, tell us a little bit about now LinkedIn Talent Solutions. I don't know too much about it. When would you say a hiring manager should leverage that tool? Because it costs money to turn on, right?
Yes, I was going to say it is a paid service. That's probably the biggest thing to bring up immediately. But it can be an incredible, useful tool to you in your organization if you are someone who makes 100 or more hires a year. Or if you come from a big company that already has an enterprise account, then why not tap into that resource? However, if you are only making a couple of hires a year, or if you know that you have a big lead time heading up to when you need to hire, maybe that's not the right tool for you. And maybe you can just find it organically by being, like I said, that brand ambassador for your company, using your best judgment and being open to finding the right talent on LinkedIn.
I love that. So you would say it's more for somebody who's doing a lot of hiring.
A lot of hiring, a big company trying to move quickly, and then not utilizing that maybe if you just need one or two people in the pipeline.
Got it. That's good to know. And so would you say in your experience that LinkedIn is something that you start to use if you're actively trying to hire, or would you say it's something that you should be using all the time?
Yeah, in my opinion, you should use it all the time, just like any other social media. Like Bronwen said, that's her new Instagram. I kind of feel that way too now as I'm knocking on 30's door. Um, but yeah, it's a great place to not only make connections, grow your professional network. If you are looking to get promoted, maybe start researching people in similar roles that you would like to attain to. From the hiring manager's perspective, and make sure that you're just consistently putting out good and valuable content so that a job seeker feels more comfortable reaching out to you if they're looking for a position. But you shouldn't log on for the first time and you haven't updated anything in 2 years. That's not a good move.
Okay, I love that. So now as we're thinking of that, so okay, get on LinkedIn. That's step one. Get on there and just start using it. But now let's talk about the how to use it. So we've talked a lot about getting on there and doing all the things. Let's give some practical tips for how you as a hiring manager can get started to leverage social media for all the amazing benefits that it has. There's two things that are top of mind for me and super important when it comes to LinkedIn content and posting on social media. One, relevancy. It's so important to think of what is relevant to your target audience. And I say this because oftentimes we get confused about what's relevant to our audience with what's relevant to us. Sometimes, if we're lucky, it might overlap. But put yourself in the position of that job seeker, of that ideal candidate that you are looking for. They are probably looking for something that talks about a company's culture. They are probably looking for some proof or indications that your industry is stable. They want to see, is this a company that people love working at? They're going to look for posts like that. So when you're posting about your company, it doesn't have to be an overt selling point every time. Sometimes just the content itself is the selling point. Mm-hmm. The second thing to consider is sustainability. And I say that because if you go in 1 week and you post 7 times a day and then you don't post again for 2 months, that's not that effective. Whereas if you say, okay, I'm going to block off 15 minutes every day to go on LinkedIn, that little bit that you can do every day will amount to more. Social media marketing, whether it's for recruiting or anything else, is pressure over time. Bronwen, I love that you said too, this is like a 2-year thing that you built to get to that 75% mark. That's an incredible goal. But it didn't happen the first time you posted, or the second, or the third. But you have been consistent this whole time, and it's a snowball effect. So as you're getting started, think about what is sustainable for you to be consistent with. Now, as you think about that, how much time can you give? Great. Now let's talk about posting. We've touched on it here and there, but just to give kind of like a bullet point, easy overview, one great way to start with is, again, sharing your company's content. You can share any content, but sharing your own organization is definitely a gold standard. When that happens, you help elevate the brand of your company and the brand that you're ultimately trying to sell to a candidate. Now, Bronwen, you mentioned that you're a part of different organizations, and I know you share a lot about each of those organizations. Tell us about some success that you've maybe had with networking from other organizations on LinkedIn.
Yes, absolutely. And I'll start with, I was on a panel with one of my fellow Global Giving Women board members. So I'm kind of paraphrasing from her here, Brooke Fiamara, but I think she articulated this so well, right? The networking event is the appetizer. It's the follow-up that really matters. And that follow-up typically is going to happen digitally, right? You're going to, connect with that person from the networking event that you had in person, or even, right, if it's a giant virtual one, one-on-one, connecting with them on LinkedIn after. So I think that's really, really important. But yes, so a lot of times, right, the networking, the referrals, all of this, right? And like how that necessarily translates to recruiting and building that brand and that open-mindedness. So I had mentioned kind of earlier, right, connecting those dots, or empowering candidates to be able to, story tell their background a little bit better based on the content that you're posting about your company. So we were actually working on a position for a casino client here in Vegas. They wanted a specific background and needed to be on site. That background didn't really exist a ton here in Vegas. So we're, working our own networks. I actually ended up posting on the WISE job board, one of the organizations that I'm a part of, WISE Women in Sports and Events. And one of our members applied. She didn't have that background, but she had an incredible background in entertainment. She had an incredible network, right, from working in nightlife for about 10 years in Vegas. And she understood the culture of the city. She understood the customers that, right, this casino partner was aiming for. So we were able to present her to our client. And one of the biggest selling factors with that too, right, like she's obviously involved with WISE. She's obviously keeping abreast of, positions that she might be interested in. She's active digitally, right, and in the community. And that translated so well. She's absolutely crushing it. She's doing better than a lot of the people that actually did have the background that were hired, just saying. So, right, that being able to connect those dots, being able to, not just the networking event, but using that as the appetizer, and then, moving that follow-up digitally and being able to, present that to our customers. It can be so successful, and they would have missed out on that talent had, that positioning not transpired.
See, I love that, because that literally would not have happened without that social media aspect, right? And it wasn't just the cold reaching out to someone on LinkedIn. It was the fact that multiple people were active and engaging and looking out for each other too. And so that's a big part of the networking aspect that's so important to do on LinkedIn, is build those relationships, because when people are there and they are active on LinkedIn, it's one thing we'll all have in common. We are all trying to grow that network, to grow professionally, and to share that information. And so sharing your company's information, get involved with organizations that matter to you and share that content, because that's thought leadership. So thought leadership is a buzzword. We all hear about that in the industry, and for good reason, because thought leadership pieces drive engagement. Charlotte, I know you see that a lot too when you post incredible things that are thought leadership pieces that have great ideas. You see great conversations. Tell us a bit about the engagement you see there.
Yeah, we definitely see a lot of great engagement through thought leadership pieces. And you don't need to have a fancy title or be an executive at a company to produce great thought leadership pieces. If there is a topic or something that you're passionate about, why not throw it in a LinkedIn article and share, see what happens?
I love that. And I love that you said too, like, you don't have to be an exec or some, fancy title. What you have to say is relevant and it matters. And so again, thinking to that relevancy of your target audience, think about what they might be willing to read. What's that clickbait? What is the conversation that they want to be a part of? And then invite someone to it too. So that's another thing that, Charlotte, I know you can probably speak on too, is when you're writing a post, make sure there's a call to action. Ask for something, offer a next step. So whether that's, tell me about your experience in the industry. What are you looking forward to at this conference? Start that conversation, because people want to share. People want to have a conversation. That's why they're there. And the way the algorithm works on LinkedIn is the more people who comment, the more people LinkedIn will show your post to. So it's a snowball effect. The more you invite people to that, the more people will see your content as well.
Yes. And you mentioned passion, Charlotte, and I think that's so important to harp on, right? Passion's magnetic, right? And stories can be permission slips. And so, right, that vulnerability is just so attractive. And, that speaks so much to a company's culture as well.
Absolutely. I love that. And last, but definitely not least, engage, engage, engage. We've talked a lot about reposting content, posting your own content, networking yourself, but I cannot stress enough the importance of that 15 minutes where you are commenting on other people's posts, where you are leaving a comment, congratulating someone, wishing someone well, saying great job, asking questions. Because the reality is, we cannot control how many people the algorithm shows our content to. But what you can control is if you comment on someone's 3 most recent posts, your name will pop up in their notifications. They will see you. And so if you're a hiring manager and you know the type of person that you're trying to reach, go comment on their stuff. Start a conversation with them. Do that before you send them a message in their inbox. Be that person whose name is familiar, and they will be more likely to start a conversation with you.
Mm-hmm. I think a good example of engagement. So I love FanDuel and our clients. So their CEO, Amy Howe, she is so well known in the industry, and FanDuel is really well known in the industry for amazing company culture, for amazing intentionality around DE&I, right? 40% of their executive leadership is actually female, which is, incredible, especially in such a male dominated industry, right? So I'm saying all of these things, right? But I am very familiar with the gaming and casinos industry. A lot of people might not be. So for those who maybe are not familiar with how, FanDuel's culture is known, but then they hop on LinkedIn and they see how Amy is engaging. They see her comments. They see her just all over the place, so empowering to all levels of the organization. You can feel it. That can be an automatic, oh, wow, they probably have a really strong company culture, and they do. So it's very indicative, right? And so if that's the way that you want to position your company and that's something that you're really proud of, make sure that you're highlighting that, because it's so important.
I love that. And that's, again, it's so awesome to hear that a company like that, with incredible leaders like that they are taking time out of their day to engage with other people, because it does matter and it does make an incredible difference. So that is all that we have for you all today. You may feel overwhelmed because we just gave you a lot of information and some great tips. If you were to walk away with anything, and add on to this, ladies, if there's anything you want to add on to, but I would say consider building your own brand. Make sure that you are out there commenting, sharing your own content, sharing your company's content. Be consistent. Make it, even if it's a little bit every day, or a little bit 3 days a week or 2 days a week, whatever you can commit to, keep it consistent. And engage with other people. Take the time to invest in what other people are saying. Not only will that help get your name out there, but will also keep you up to date on what people are talking about. You could be missing out on an incredible trend and a shift in the hiring market simply because you're not out there engaging with it. So taking the time to do all of these things is so incredible. And if you're still feeling overwhelmed, that's okay. We're here to help. We would love to help you write your own job description, find those candidates. Bronwen, do you want to tell us a little bit more about what next steps someone could take if they want a little more help than doing it themselves?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we are definitely always here to help, right? Insight Global, we help our clients attract, develop, and retain talent, right? And your digital brand, that is going to be a candidate's first impression, regardless, of what the skill set or what the background is that you're recruiting for, right? Post-COVID world, digital brand, first impression. So make that as successful as possible, right? And so once again, Insight Global, we help our clients attract, develop, and retain talent. That now includes helping with, things like this and consulting and providing feedback. And we'll do that, complimentary, right? It's so important for this talent solutions evolution to, be successful. And we're here to help, whether it's recruiting, culture and diversity, equity and inclusion consulting, anything, we're here.
Awesome. I love that. Thank you all so much for taking the time to join us. We look forward to talking to you soon. Have a good day.
Thanks.
Bye.